with that single stroke, Trump will have basically crowned himself king. No Congress and no courts can stop him, and even if Congress were to try, it would take the courts to enforce their ability to hold hearings, investigations, subpoenas, laws, and without power of the contempt, the courts will have lost that ability. The final checkmate, Republicans move to destroy the balance of power. And here's how it works. This idea of a three-part government where power is broken into three sections, three different divisions of government, the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. This idea originated in many ways with the Iroquois Confederacy, and the famed lawyer, late 16th, early 17th, or late 17th, early 18th century lawyer Montesquieu, if I'm correct on the dates there, double check me. But he wrote this famous book called the Something of Laws, The Essence of Laws, or words to that effect. Anyhow, that really animated the founders. I mean, Jefferson and Adams in particular constantly having conversations about this, Thomas Paine as well, Alexander Hamilton. And Montesquieu's idea was the reason the dictators emerge, even in democratic societies like Greece and Rome, ancient Rome, the reason the dictators emerge is because there are no checks on their power. And so let's create three branches of government, and each one has relatively equal power in terms of their ability to constrain the other two. So Congress can pass laws telling the Supreme Court what they can and cannot vote on and defining their budget. And even defining, when they meet and what they, how many members they have. So Congress can regulate the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court can tell Congress, no, that law that you just passed is unconstitutional. We're going to strike it down. Both those groups can restrain the president. Congress can pass laws saying the president may or may not do a particular thing. Can't get rich quick, can't take airplanes, can't, whatever. They can pass laws that have to do with campaign finance and how the president can run or not run for re-election. All these kinds of, how many terms the president can have. So Congress can regulate the president. And the Supreme Court can enforce those regulations against the president. And in fact, the entire federal court system can. And then, of course, the president has the power to have oversight over Congress. If he thinks somebody in Congress is doing something wrong, he has the police power of the nation. He can have them investigated or arrested, as we just saw with this representative in I believe it was in Maryland. And the president also has, with regard to the Supreme Court, some say in as much as the president has to nominate Supreme Court justices. They all have to pass through the Article II branch to become the Article III or become members of the Article III branch. So here we have three branches of government that check each other. Keep in mind, you have to have all three checking each other functionally to not end up with a dictatorship. So here's what's happened. Congress has completely surrendered, or at least Republicans in Congress have completely surrendered their power to President Trump. So they are no longer checking Trump, regardless of how bad his impulses may be. Which means that the only limit to Trump's power right now is the courts. That's it. I mean, you could argue that the press plays some role, but not really. I mean, the press is designed to inform us, but it really doesn't have power. And so what they have now put into this new, big, beautiful billionaire tax cut bill is this just absolutely insane quote, which says, and this is the law, it says, or the proposed law, this is the amendment to the big, brutal bill. No court of the United States may use appropriated funds, see, this is the Congress using its power of the purse, may use appropriated funds to enforce a contempt citation for failure to comply with an injunction or temporary restraining order if no security was given when the injunction or order was issued. Now, what this means, let's say that the ACLU decides to sue the Trump administration for, violating our civil rights. What this says is if the ACLU does not put up a bond when they make that lawsuit, then, and the judge rules in favor of the ACLU, and Trump refuses to follow or even acknowledge the court's order, as is largely what's happening right now with the Supreme Court's order that Kilmar Garcia be brought back to the United States, a 9-0 ruling. The only way that the court system can enforce their rulings is through the power of what's called contempt of court. They can hold the individual lawyer who is arguing on behalf of Donald Trump in contempt and throw his or her, butt in jail. They can hit them with fines that get progressively greater and greater and greater. This is the only way that the courts can enforce their orders. Otherwise, it's just moral persuasion. Now, the kicker is that when you sue the administration for violation of civil rights laws or violations of, habeas corpus or whatever it may be, nobody ever puts up bond. There are thousands of these lawsuits, or hundreds of these lawsuits, certainly that are, high visibility versions of it, against the Trump administration right now. There's not a bond involved in a single one. So what this means is that if the courts, basically what it means is that the administration is free to ignore the courts, and the courts can't enforce their actions with a contempt of court citation. Dr. Chemerinsky, who, as I mentioned, will be a guest on the program at the bottom of the hour, he said, he wrote yesterday on the Just Security blog, he said, without this contempt power, judicial orders are meaningless and can be ignored. There's no way to understand this except as a way to keep the Trump administration from being restrained when it violates the Constitution or otherwise breaks the law. This would be a stunning restriction on the power of the federal courts. The Supreme Court has long recognized that the contempt power is integral to the authority of the federal courts. Without the ability to enforce judicial orders, they are rendered mere advisory opinions which parties are free to disregard. He says this is an effort by the Trump administration to negate one of the few checks that exist on its power. This is just over the top. And this is right now in this legislation that the House is voting on today and that, they're going to be sending to the Senate. It is time to call your members of the House and Senate and tell them to stop this, this piece of this law that would eliminate federal court's ability to hold the administration in contempt of court. 202-224-3121 is the phone number for members of Congress. It's for the Congressional Switchboard. Give them a call and let them know what you're thinking. If we don't, we should all be practicing our Heil Trump salutes like Elon does.